Everyone seems to be making a big deal about the fact that, Mr. Simpson has asserted his constitutional rights, but and called him uncooperative and labeled him all of these things before anyone knew anything from him. And his attorney has let everyone know, like, there were three occasions where the police canceled him going to speak to them. So that's really, I don't know how you call someone uncooperative if the police department is who canceled three of the interviews. Yeah, and I understand, like, what they wanted was to have a warrant when he walked in the door and arrest him, but they never could get enough evidence to arrest him for anything other than, hearsay from other people about something that happened to her. Whatever the neighbor saw or said is hearsay, right? So anything at the party that they talked to, all of these things that have come out and said all these things happened, it's still, when you boil it down, according to the police department, they don't have any evidence of a murder. Everywhere that they, have conducted these searches where they continue to say that they're close, or this is where they think they're going to find something, they then have to backtrack and say, well, unfortunately, there's no evidence there. There's no evidence there. And they're started back, if if the reports are correct, they've started back in Almost Park at square one. So instead of this rush to judgment and arresting someone and then trying to solve the crime, they maybe should have tried to solve the crime and then arrested someone.
Robbie, what are your thoughts about
And as if there is a crime, right? I mean, no one even knows if there is a crime at this point. And I know that, everyone has their opinions on that. But I just mean, from a legal standpoint, at this point, as a lawyer looking at it, not through emotion or, but just what evidence is there? That's what you have to have.
and let's go
And
with that. What evidence is there, right? The big question is, where is Suzanne?
exactly. But that no one has that answer. And once they arrested Mr. Simpson and he decided, okay, whoa, may, who knows what would have happened if he had actually been given the opportunity to come in, talk to them, and leave. Many times cases are built on the fact that someone came in and gave statements that then later the police are able to prove are lies. And that helps an investigation. It leads them to other things. It can actually help you solve just by someone coming in and telling blatant lies about stuff. It's better than nothing at all. But once you've arrested someone, and I think that in Mr. Simpson's circumstance, it was already obvious before he was arrested where the media was going with this and where the public opinion was going with this. And so he gets arrested. He's being held on a $2 million bonds for misdemeanor cases. Keep your mouth shut, bud. That you've been convicted at this point. You've got $2 million bonds on two misdemeanor cases. Judge and jury have been, they're back. Everyone has decided you did it. And that's the position that this man was in when he got arrested. So he decided to do, frankly, the smart thing and not say anything. Does that make you uncooperative? Or does that make you someone who sees the writings on the wall? I need to do what I need to do to save myself.
So what do you think it shows though? It not only shows that I guess he's there without saying anything, but his family is not united with him, it seems. It seems that he has a hard time retaining an attorney, because I think this is the third one that he's tried to have, but yet, and this is, I guess, the one that's going to stick with him. Doesn't that say anything or say a lot?
I don't think that's evidence of anything, frankly. You know, I mean, um, I think that there's really no telling if his family has support for him or not. Um, Someone's finances are, no one knows truly how someone's living or if they're living beyond their means or within their means. That's all something none of us can know the answers to that, you know, and to retain an attorney for the kind of case that this is trying to be turned into, right? You're not really truly talking about two murder cases, or two misdemeanor cases. You're talking about two misdemeanor cases, now a federal case, and they're seriously trying to make a murder case against you. I mean, and eventually that may happen, but it also may not. And that's a terrible thing for every single person involved. That is that's the horror of how this has all been handled, right? The rush to judgment and the push to arrest, I think, destroyed where this case should be right now. We are no closer to knowing anything today than we were 2.5, 3 weeks ago. That is awful.
And let's talk about that. Why do you think police were so rushed to arrest him, arrest anybody? Is it because of where she came from? Is it because of, you know, who she is, the circumstances?
You know, um, look at today's times. We are in this era of everyone wants the resolution. It's a fascinating story for a few days, but everyone's going to lose interest. So, and people are so with social media and all of the things that, TikTok is the news now, and it's wrong most of the time, which I have to remind my teenager of, like, what really, where did you hear that on TikTok? Because that's not true. These are the times we're living in. Fast. This is what we want. We want fast. We want fast because our attention span is gone to the next thing. And the pressure that all of those things create and place on the police and the investigators is I'm sure it's overwhelming, but it doesn't change the fact that when you do that, you're going to miss a lot of things, and those, more often than not, in cases like this, are missed opportunities. And so the rush here meant that they may have missed some huge opportunities. They don't have the opportunity to speak to Mr. Simpson at this point because there was the rush to arrest him, and he asserted a constitutional right. And I frankly don't fault him for that, given the everything that was being said about him. I mean, pretty much everyone has decided that he must have done something to his wife, or he must know something about this, and you've heard nothing from him. But not all of what was reported was true. But that's because there's got to hurry and get the story, and we need to hurry and get the arrest, and we need to be the ones who look like, we did our job, and we're the best, we're the greatest. And it's a terrible way to be, but that's where we are.
So do you think a lot of it is the police and right, we don't, it's a whole bunch of agencies, I guess, in charge of this
Right.
almost
This
part.
is, yes, it's not, I'm not saying it's almost, I'm not saying police. I mean, there were rangers involved, there were police involved, there were all sorts of people involved in this. And every single one of them are truly trying to do the right thing and do their jobs. But the pressure placed on them and today is overwhelming. And it's not like Almost Park Police Department is a huge department with massive resources. I mean, people say what you want. It is an amazing part of San Antonio, but that doesn't mean that they're, um, they don't have all of the tools that some bigger departments have, and they don't have the manpower bigger departments have. So the pressure on them is even greater. And they bring in other people and other people, so I don't want to fault, I'm not faulting anyone in this. I'm saying it's very unfortunate that there was not the opportunity to just take a beat. Let's really start, let's investigate. And you can bring someone in, my mother always told me, you catch more flies, right? If you're sweeter than if you're sour. So uh, I, who's to, I can't judge that from their decision making, but I think that there were probably some truly missed opportunities here.
So where do we go from here, do you think? Where do you see, I guess, the case with Brad Simpson? And do you do you think he can ever get a fair trial with everything that's gone on? And what if they never find his wife?
Well, right now, right, he has Stephen Gilmore couldn't have been more spot on and in what he said, right? Like there's two misdemeanor cases that they're probably never they're not going to be able to prosecute them, and he's held on $2 million bond. Now, if he could even make a $2 million bond, which on two misdemeanor cases is ludicrous. I mean, if you'd had him on a $2 million bond and you actually had the evidence and we're working on getting him indicted or arrested and charged on a murder, maybe, but you weren't. And we see that now. And so there's a federal detainer just in case, right? So even if he could make a $2 million bond, he goes into federal custody. Um, that and he would be detained. So, because that's obviously you're not entitled to a bond in federal court. That's why that was the option they had to take because they don't have the evidence in the other case. And if they do, then I if they do, I applaud them for being able to keep it to themselves and not put it out for everyone else to talk about and hear about. I applaud them for um, keeping the investigation private, which, too much of this case has been played out in the news. When you're live streaming a search at a dump site or trying to make it seem like, oh, and there's vultures circling at the site. Well, that's that's right. It's ridiculous reporting, right? Like there's vultures at the dump every day. That was this salaciousness of trying to turn that into something was stupid. And I don't like to use that word, but it was stupid. You're just forcing a story where there's not one there, and they eventually have to say, we found no evidence there. But you have leaked or you have informed this poor family that they're really close to finding something, but you weren't. Like that's what I'm talking about. The pressure, I understand, but you have to just do your jobs. Just focus on doing your job. Don't worry about what anyone wants to know or thinks they're all entitled to know. They're not. We're not really, as the public, when they're doing an investigation, entitled to know what the evidence is at that point. And we need to get over it, thinking that we are.
Right. And then the charges that you said that he's held on a $2 million bond, now on a federal detainer, so he's never going to get out. What are your, I know that you said that it's way too high, it's ludicrous. Um, so what point are they trying to prove by keeping him there? Is it just to satisfy the community, the family, like, hey, we have somebody? It's not just
I think
like,
it's to satisfy the community, right? It's the appearance of where, look, everyone thinks that he must have done something, so we're with y'all, and we're going to make sure that he stays in custody. But it has not helped at all. It hasn't helped the investigation. And, it's a squeeze, right? That's what it is. When law enforcement's putting a bond on you like that, and then they bring in a federal case against you, the squeeze is on. That if we do enough and we hold you long enough, and then he's in seg, so he is 23 hours a day. For someone who's never apparently been arrested or in custody like that before, it's traumatic to say the least. It is, that's not the guy from Almas Park on 2 misdemeanor cases in seg. Sounds silly when you say it, but that's the reality. He has a federal detainer. That doesn't mean that you put someone in seg, but the squeeze is on. If we hold him and make it miserable enough and pile enough on top of him, maybe then he'll talk to us. And what? I don't see that happening at this point. You know, and again, hopefully there is a lot of evidence that they are putting together, and that is the hope for people, because I think everyone just wants to know where she is. But I don't think you're going to get that answer by treating someone so unjustly.
well, and it's obvious that their kids, right, has lost out on both,
Right.
not having their mom, not having their dad, and their youngest only being 5. So um, that's the reality, whether people want to kind of play everything together, right? They've lost both parents, and it's an awful situation.
Yeah, horrific for them.
Robbie, can you talk about how this is what you do, right? You're a defense attorney who some of your clients have faced uphill battles like Brad Simpson, and how not only is it so challenging to try and reverse everyone's opinion, things of that, and everything seems so stacked up against you, but how difficult is it for, I guess, Brad Simpson's attorney and for Brad to just stay focused on the ball and what is at hand, and to I guess filter out all the noise that's going on.
Well, for Brad, because he's in seg 23 hours a day, it's probably pretty easy to keep it all filtered out because he's sitting in there alone. So, his, I would imagine the only contact he's having with many people is with his attorney. So, in that sense, it may be better, right? He isn't walking around his neighborhood with people pointing their fingers at him. I don't know what would be worse. being there for 23 hours a day, locked up in seg, or walking around outside your house with everyone pointing their fingers at you, thinking you must have done something. You did something. But it, it I think that his attorneys, well, I think that number one, Stephen Gilmore is really, he's so smart. And so he will be able to stay focused. And I think his comments were, I mean, really spot on. And if you, right, so the public, and I'm not as a lawyer, just I read all of the articles, I read the stories, I read that he was uncooperative. And then, oh, hold on a minute. That's not actually accurate. His attorney has now let you know that, hey, he was set up like, 3 times to go meet with them, and they canceled on it. Not him canceling, not him not showing. They canceled on Brad. Law enforcement didn't allow him to come in and cooperate. I don't call that being uncooperative. There's such a That is such a hugely different version of events. I mean, maybe it's somewhere in the middle, but that's really quite different. But because no one has, Brad can't speak, and there was no one obviously speaking on his behalf until Stephen started talking, then it really and truly for me was a like, whoa, well, that's news. That's something that I wish it had been reported a little differently from the get-go, but it doesn't work that way.
Right. We're always at the mercy of police and their narrative, right? So it's you can only ask so many different ways, and then you get the same right answer. And it is a narrative that they, right, without saying it's him, basically all the moves that they're making is it's him,
It's him.
right? Which
Except
is
the problem is it's him, but what? Because if you are also listening to the narrative, everywhere that they go, they end up acknowledging that there's no evidence, and there's no evidence. Not just that there is no body, but they have found no evidence.
so. In your opinion, do you think what does Brad's future look like? Is he eventually going to be able to get out? Is he eventually going to be able to reduce that bond? Um, what is
I
what?
don't I don't think that bond amount is ever going to matter. I think eventually, look, that they're going to have to decide. We don't have anyone. If she's never found, if she has never, um, what like the the best outcome would be that she ends up being okay somewhere. All right. And that's the way that that's the reality. That's what you want to have happen. And then, okay, maybe she says that what the neighbor said, that's what happened. And he could be prosecuted on misdemeanor charges. Or she says that's not how it quite happened that night. And everything got so crazy. Everyone's seen Gone Girl, right? But who's not going to contact their kids? I don't know. I can't even imagine that. And I think that's the big deal if for everyone who um, discusses her, they do discuss that's not something she would do, right? So it's unfortunate that it doesn't seem that's going to be the outcome. It doesn't appear that we're going to get some sort of happy resolution here. And for Brad, he has to sit there and wait it out. Eventually, the DA's office has to decide, look, we got to dump these misdemeanors, and there's He could be charged with murder anytime, right? There's no statute of limitations. They can continue to investigate. And if she is found, or if they find evidence that something happened to her, then they can move forward. If it's, again, if it's that Brad did it, if that's where the evidence leads them, you don't have any idea. I mean, I could spin the narrative from the news articles. Okay, let's just say the neighbor saw them fighting and her trying to run away, and then she got away. Okay, and then what? She got away, and city of San Antonio has allowed people to move in anywhere and everywhere they want to. Okay, we just had a 63-year-old woman killed on a walking trail. So, and that's the city's fault. That's a problem. So if he actually got in his truck and drove around for a few hours, was he looking for her? You know, it's completely different if you take it from that angle. But no one talked to him. No one spoke to him. They canceled on him 3 times.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Even if he does talk, right, he's in a different place to
Absolutely.
share his story, and it's going to be through his attorney. So,
Right. And it should be, right? That's why we have that's why the laws are the way they are, but no one remembers that anymore. And it's really frustrating. But it creates problems for both sides. This rush to judge people creates problems for the prosecution side and their team and the police, and it creates problems for the defendant and the defense team and the defense attorney. Because the rush can and sometimes is extremely wrong. And if that is the case here, then it is a horrific tragedy now for truly everyone. But no one knows. I do think that his defense attorney, though, was just, I mean, he's spot on in where his client is at this point. The misdemeanors will have to be dumped. Then he gets transferred to federal custody and he faces a federal indictment for having an illegal firearm that he
right.
has had, and that he's had. I don't know how many attorneys he's had appointed or signed on. I have no idea. But that if they were all appointed, there are you want someone appointed who isn't on a case like this just on a misdemeanor wheel, right? This is probably going to take someone like Gilmore who's has some more experience, and maybe he's not really on the misdemeanor wheel. There's no, you don't even know what factors were involved in that.
Right. I think he's gone through at least one. I want to say one or two, and then Steven's stuck. So, right. It definitely has to be the right fit. It definitely has to be someone that can,
You
handle.
certainly don't want someone who just got out of law school and is taking misdemeanor appointments only appointed
Exactly.
to Brad Simpson but and
Right.
that could have been the case.